I think we can all agree that 2020 has probably been the worst year of all our lives. From the COVID pandemic to asteroids barely missing the Earth to murder hornets. It's a year we're not soon going to forget. Why don't we get rid of 2020 with a nice little Christmas tale? Oh, I don't know. How about one about an 8-foot tall monster with shaggy black-brown hair, horns on each side of its mangoat face, with its flicking, lolling tongue dragging out of its mouth? Hey, it is 2020. What can I say? Hello, folks. I'm Steve Gilly, along with this fella here on my right named Rod Mullins, and this is Stories, A History of Appalachia.
Steve, you had me at the part where we said, let's get rid of 2020 until you started giving that description. And, well, I thought we were talking about one of our friends' ex-wives through there for a minute. But then, here it is. It is 2020. So
yes, it is. Yeah, and this is a story for 2020, a Christmas story for this hellacious year.
Wow.
Are you ready?
Yes, I am. Let's get things started.
Okay. Well, a Christmas tradition here at Stories is to tell a story about the Yuletide holiday. And since it's 2020, this story is not about Santa Claus, the elves, or even Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. No, it's about the evil side of Christmas.
Oh.
Yeah, there is an evil side, Rod, at least according to some folks who live in Appalachia.
Well, the European settlers of our region came mainly from Great Britain and also from Ireland, and they were followed closely by people from what is now Germany and also Switzerland. Now, these folks, known as Pennsylvania Dutch or Deutsch, the German word for German, brought a lot of traditions and folk tales with them from Central Europe, including the one that we're going to tell you about today. And of those tales, they were reinforced in the late 19th and early 20th century when European immigrants flocked to the coal fields and steel mills of Appalachia.
In Central European folklore, there exists a supernatural being described as half goat, half demon, with a side order of horns. And this goat demon spends his Christmas punishing bad little children, sort of the flip side of old Kris Kringle, who, by the way, was also a Central European tradition.
Right.
This beast, who goes by the name of Krampus, is one of the companions of St. Nicholas and has been celebrated over the centuries in Austria, Bavaria, Croatia, the Czech Republic, Slovakia, Slovenia, and parts of Italy. Now, Krampus was known as the horned god of the witches and later as the devil himself. And he makes his appearance a few weeks before Christmas Day. Now, as he made his visits, Rod, along with St. Nicholas, it would carry over its back an old burlap sack and in its right hand a bundle of branches called rootin, which recall initiation rites of covens of witches, symbolizing false death and rebirth. In its left hand, held in wicked claws, is a chain lined with tiny rusted brass bells. Just like Santa has sleigh bells to announce his arrival, Krampus has his rusted-out brass bells to announce his.
Well, you see, on December the 6th, that was the traditional feast day of St. Nicholas in Europe. The night before was called Krampus Night or Krampusnacht. I hope I got that right, Steve.
That's close enough for me.
Okay. On that night, the beast, it appears in the street, sometimes accompanied by St. Nicholas and sometimes by himself. He visits homes and businesses, and while St. Nicholas gives out gifts, it's Krampus who gives out those lumps of coal that you all have heard about. Now, we've always been told, I guess, when I was growing up and I was younger, that yes, if I had been a bad boy, that Santa Claus or St. Nick would leave a lump of coal in my stocking. That's not the way that it used to be in the old days, because this is what Krampus would do. He'd put the lump of coal in your stocking, or at least leave it there for you as a present. Many tales tell of Krampus carrying a whip in his hands for that sack being strapped to his back in order to cart off evil children for beating, drowning, eating, or maybe a quick trip straight to hell.
There's a tradition to offer Krampus a schnapps or fruit brandy. Yeah, I guess that'd be about what he'd want to have, other than
I guess that would soothe
children.
him probably in his anger states, so to speak. So
Well, originally, Krampus was said to be the son of hell from Norse mythology, but as Christianity spread throughout Europe, he became the dark companion of St. Nicholas. In the New World British colonies, the celebration of Christmas was discouraged due to the feeling that, well, Christmas should be a solemn affair. And when Christmas and Santa Claus and all that began to be accepted, Krampus was shunted off to the side. That is, until those immigrants moved to Pennsylvania and West Virginia.
In 1907, the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette told of Krampus for those who weren't aware of him, explaining that on December 5th, he would go around town and he would punish bad kids with his willow switch and chains. Kind of another little story we'd hear growing up in Appalachia of being whipped with a willow switch. Go out and get you a willow switch and get ready to get whipped. Well, that's sort of the way Krampus did things too. Christmas cards from the 1800s show St. Nicholas and old Krampus making him a regular part of Christmas. But, Steve, things changed as time went on.
Yes, they did. Krampus became a pariah in Europe, with celebrations of the horned one falling out of favor. In 1934, Austria outlawed Krampus and Krampus celebrations, continuing through and after World War II up until the 1950s. And Nazi Germany also banned Krampus celebrations as being against the fatherland. Now, the folklore surrounding Krampus remained in the shadowed hollows of Appalachia, and according to some researchers, the inspiration for the colloquial name Grampus, given to the pin-spired, demon-faced Dobson fly larva of the mountainous region, came from the tales of the Pennsylvania Dutch in America's early days. And, you know, I had never heard of Krampus growing up, although I've heard of these other things like lumps of coal and being whipped with a willow switch. But I do know someone who is from German extraction. I think her grandparents were full German. And I mentioned this stuff to her, and yeah, she was very well aware of all of this and knew exactly who Krampus was.
Well, here's just something interesting, too. You use the word Krampus, and then we've talked about the colloquial name Grampus.
Right.
Did you know that Grampus was also another name for an animal, or should I say an amphibious creature that resides in the creeks and also the streams, or used to in large numbers, until they started slowly dying off, either by human intervention, killing them, or just the streams being changed and so forth? We're talking about the hellbender.
Yeah. Seems like I remember something about that. He was also called the Grampus as well. Yeah.
My dad has referred to a hellbender as a Grampus, and I was like, why did you call it that? He doesn't really know. It's just something that he, had heard growing up, I guess, and knew it by that name, and that's what they referred to it as. So it's kind of strange how this thing, but the Grampus, or the Grampus as it was called, was also associated with the thing of how they got the name Hellbender too, because they said it looked like something straight out of hell, and that's probably the reason why it's all kind of been associated together.
Well, Krampus, I guess, would look like something straight out of hell and probably would make a good hellbender.
Yep.
And Rod, increasingly in America, there are Krampus parties, Krampus costume contests, and other celebrations of Krampus Night on December 5th, something like a second Halloween. So that's something among the younger folks that's starting to pick up.
Well, that's, I'm not exactly young, but I've never heard of that before, Steve, of, this sort of thing picking back up. But, there is an emphasis by some young people to kind of get back to those, how can we say it, Central European sort of things, traditions, and in ways, I guess, as people do their own form of exploration into life and the world, these sort of things start coming back up against us again, and we start seeing them once again kind of making their rounds.
I prefer to call it any excuse to have a party, be quite honest with you.
Sort of like the Festivus sort of thing.
There you go.
There we go.
And folks, that's the story of the Krampus, another bit of the history and traditions of this place we call home, Appalachia. Thanks for listening. You can subscribe to the audio version of the Stories podcast at Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Radio Public, TuneIn, and on many other places. Now, if you'd rather get your video feast of both Rod and I, speaking of, odd man goat shaped things.
Feast? Did you say feast?
I suppose. Anyway, you can do that on YouTube, on our YouTube channel. be sure to go over there, and when you do, click that subscribe button and give us a like if you don't care. All right? So, till next we meet, Merry Christmas, everybody.
Merry Christmas.